Time now for the Sunday Talk, where we tap into the debate of the week. Are women's rights under threat? Donald Trump made two major announcements this week that have left some asking if American women could soon live in The Handmaid's Tale.
My name is Offred, and I intend to survive.
The new hit series, based on Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, has people talking. In the radically religious Republic of Gilead, women have no rights, and the male leaders determine what their bodies are used for.
You girls will serve the leaders and their barren wives.
And some say its popularity has something to do with Trump's America.
For too long, the federal government has used the power of the state as a weapon against people of faith.
This week, an executive order on religious liberty, allowing church leaders to campaign and raise money for political causes, such as fighting abortion.
We are giving our churches their voices back.
It could also allow religiously affiliated employers to refuse to cover birth control. Then, on the same day, this.
Make no mistake, this is a repeal and a replace of Obamacare. Make no mistake about it.
Part of Trump's new health care bill could allow insurance companies to charge higher premiums for pregnant women and rape victims.
Shame! Shame! Shame!
It could also cut funding for Planned Parenthood by 30%.
This is a really devastating moment for women's health.
On Friday, these protesters argued Trump's threat to women is real. Is it? And is any of that anxiety coming here? I'm joined by our panelists. Supriya Dwivedi is a talk radio host in Toronto. Tasha Keratin is a talk radio host and columnist with iPolitics. And Stephen Marsh is an author and culture writer with Esquire. So, Supriya, I'm going to start with you on this one. Is there any serious comparison to The Handmaid's Tale with what's happening to women in America?
So, I mean, I don't think we can actually say that, you know, American women are obviously living in Gilead, and I think that's it's a hyperbolic comparison for a reason. But the book also does make the point, as well as many other writers that have been observing this, that situations like this don't just happen overnight. Or you don't wake up one day and all of a sudden all your rights are gone. Generally, your rights become eroded over time. And I think whenever you're looking at a country in which you have a predominant male legislature, and they're guided either by their own religiosity or by the religiosity of their constituents, it ends up eroding away at women's rights. And you're seeing that right now, I think, piecemeal with the Trump administration. But to be fair, it is no real difference from any other GOP administration thus far.
Stephen, you've been writing about topics like this for a while.
Yeah, I have the unfortunate case of having written a book about this and thought about it quite a bit. And I mean, I just think the idea that we're heading towards Gilead, that we're heading towards a fundamentalist patriarchal society, if you look at the data, is just kind of ridiculous. Because, I mean, you know, women gain economic power every year. They gain political power every year. Violence against women declines every year. Planned Parenthood came out with its report this January that showed that abortions are as low as they've ever been, but so are unwanted pregnancies. And their conclusion, Planned Parenthood's conclusion, is that women's sexual health, reproductive health has never been higher in the United States.
I'll let you back in a moment, Supriya, but Tasha, your sense?
Well, I think that there's reason for concern that the Trump administration is autocratic, writ large. I don't necessarily think that women are the first line of attack in what the president is doing or thinking. He doesn't like the press. He likes people who think like him. Alternative facts have become, a part of our everyday speech. So there's a lot of autocratic behavior by the administration in general. Do I think we're heading towards the Republic of Gilead? No, I don't think that it's going to go that far. And I take Supriya's point. If you want to find a Republic of Gilead, go to Saudi Arabia, where women do not have rights over their own bodies, can't leave their own house without a male accompaniment, have to dress in a certain way. Men can take many wives. I mean, you can go on and on in terms of parallels with The Handmaid's Tale. But I don't think that the Trump administration would lead the country down a path that absolute unless it became run by religious individuals. And I don't think that that is what this is about.
But I mean, that is what predominates a lot of GOP, Congress talk. That is a lot of what Mike Pence has talked about his ideology quite openly, is that, in fact, he is guided by a very right-wing view of Christianity. So it's not as if to say that this isn't happening at all. And I would say that any country that has a mass population in which they don't have access to higher education, post-secondary education, and they're guided by by religion is never going to make for a great society for either women or children.
Yeah, well, the Christian Coalition developed in the United States in the 1980s.
Yeah.
The Christian Coalition and Ralph Reed and that movement informed the Republican Party to a great degree, there's no question. But you saw pendulum swings also back under different administrations. I don't think the Trump administration is going to take the country down under its tenure to such an extreme position. I think there are people who would espouse it, but I don't think that they are going to get there.
But it couldn't if it even wanted to. I mean, the fascinating thing is that period, the Reagan-Bush years, so like 1980 to 1992, the years of what Susan Flutie called the backlash, that was the years of the most rapid closing of the pay gap in history. Right? The forces that are affecting gender are absolutely out of the control of whoever is elected. I mean, really, like, and the trends that we're talking...
defunding Planned Parenthood is pretty up there. Like eroding abortion rights at the state level is right up there. Putting in fetal heartbeat bills at the state level are right up there. That's very easy.
I'm not saying that there's no reason to be... I'm not saying there's no reason to be fearful. I'm not saying there's no danger here. There is an immense danger here. But I think the Gilead thing, like, you wake up every morning and there's another magazine piece, like it was Red Book, New Yorker, and so on, comparing it to Gilead. And Gilead is a fundamentalist patriarchal society, and the truth of the matter is we're not going anywhere near that. We're actually devolving into a completely new kind of misogyny.
So, I mean, I don't disagree with that, but if we're only holding up Gilead as our bar for what? Well, at least we're not Gilead, so we're okay.
Or Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
But the conceit, the brilliance of The Handmaid's Tale as a novel is that it was a science fiction novel about the past, right? Everything that happened in the book had actually happened to women, or was happening to women at the same time. But the consequence of that is that it's a book about the past. And when you look at the future, when you look at where the future is going, it's not going to Gilead. And that's why I think it's actually, these comparisons are not helpful. Because,
I would agree with that.
Donald Trump is not the commander.
I think, well, The Handmaid's Tale is a brilliant novel, and it is a cautionary tale in many ways, but it's hyperbole to suggest that that's where things are going. And I think the backlash you were referring to is actually when people see that language being used, people on the right and people who are people of faith will naturally rebel against that, and it actually makes things worse.
But what do you say
women.
to Supriya's argument that there has been change, that, for example, it is becoming much more difficult to get an abortion in many states?
Restrictions on abortion rights obviously will compromise women's rights, but that is not, like I said, that is not that the Trump administration is behind all those individual states that are doing this.
No, of course not.
And this is why I'm saying that the United States has checks and balances as well within the party system and within the legislative system.
We'll see.
And I think that you may see a pendulum swing, like I said, to that, but it also can swing back the other way. If other freedoms are eroded, I agree, freedom of speech, freedom of the media, other things, that can present a situation where those
like a perfect storm, if you will.
Exactly, and I don't see
that's
that
not the
happening.
storm that's coming. Like, the storm that is coming is not Gilead. The storm that is coming, we should not worry about the commander. Like, we should worry about the basement dwelling red pillars and their misogyny. That's what's new. And that is not the result of the control of government and economy by men.
But there's
That's
also
actually
an
the
overlap
result of, like,
between
the
those
arrival
red
of equality.
pillars and guys like Putin and guys like Trump and people that are supporting candidates like within the party of the Front National. So there is definitely an overlap within those red pillars and also those who would like us to see go back to go.
Yeah, they're kind of a dead letter.
I mean, Front National is run by a woman.
Yeah, so it must be feminist.
No,
then.
but,
like,
well, I mean, the point is that's not the commander. Right, that's not patriarchy.
Sure, but again, like, I don't think we should be basing this solely on, are we at Gilead yet? If not, everything's fine. I just
I just want to, Stephen, I'm going to hold you there because I just want to move this on. I've been trying to get a sense of whether any of this anxiety, any of this change, this movement is coming here, because we've had some of these debates, not at the same level as in the States, but is any of that coming here, like this push that towards more freedom of speech for religious leaders and closer line between religious leaders and government and politicians?
It's interesting because there have been conversations around interest groups, which include religions, religious groups, and the restrictions that are placed on them under the tax code. If you're a charity in this country, you are restricted from political activity. That just doesn't cover just faith. It can cover environmental groups. It can cover anybody who is an activist organization that bills himself as a charity.
So is what's happening in the States, is that encouraging or setting back that?
Well, what the States is doing is they're saying that religion should be, as a charity, should still be able to lobby. And the irony, of course, is that religion has been lobbying in the United States indirectly all the time. This is simply saying we're going to allow you to be overtly so.
I'm wondering what impact do you see it, if any, having here?
I honestly see it having very little impact. The ironic thing is that even though the U.S. has much better protections against the meddling of church and state than to us, for example, we explicitly refer to the supremacy of God in the preamble to our Constitution. Our head of state is also the head of a church. But we are generally, as a society, much more secular, and I think that's honestly what keeps our laws much more egalitarian and much more equal, and we don't have the same sort of direct attack on women's rights that we see in other countries.
I mean, the question is just how far America is going to go from the rest of the developed world, right? I mean, it is on its own path, you know, not just with these women's issues and faith issues, but with basic issues of government, basic issues of what government does, basic issues of what freedom are. And like, no, I don't think we're on one path and America is going like this. And it's very dangerous to think how far it could go.
Well, you're assuming it will go there. You're assuming, and everyone, and this is the thing.
Oh, it's gone there.
No,
I am under the assumption that Trump...
Yeah,
I mean, I'm working on the basic premise that Trump is different than us.
No, the Trump, I agree, the Trump administration is very different than what we have seen in Canada. It's also very different than what you've seen in the United States. And you can compare his speeches, you can compare his entire modus operandi is extremely different than any other leader.
Right now, there's a conservative leadership race happening right now, and I'm just wondering what sort of impact it may or may not be having on that. We've seen the two candidates who were
Trump-esque.
Perhaps, yes. O'Leary has dropped out,
yes.
and Kelly Leitch is maybe not doing as well as before.
No, she's polling at 11%, and I think that in fact, has shown that there is always been a difference in the way Canadians and the Americans approach their politics from the religious perspective and other. That's why I don't think I agree with Supriya. I don't think it's going to translate here, and I don't think in the conservative race that it has translated in anything concrete for faith communities. But what I was referencing earlier in terms of charities and speaking out is something that's been sought in Canada for quite a while.
So what impact do you see it having here, if any? Will it embolden or not those movements?
I think you're going to see an emboldened minority within the Conservative caucus, and I think you're already sort of starting to see that. When you look at polling coming out versus who's most in line with Trump's policies, it's always it's a minority of Conservative voters, but they're sizable, and there's a reason why people like Kelly Leitch have been trying to play the Trump card, and by saying the comment section is coming back, because there is an appetite for that. However, I just think we have enough of a majority here that is sane that won't allow for it to happen.
But she was
I'm
playing
sure
that
you're
in
both trying to get in. I'm sorry, Stephen. We're out of time.
Sorry.
That was pretty interesting. Thank you so much, all of you.